We'll kick things off. Welcome to today's webinar on Yealink's Device Management Platform. My name is Scott Young and I am the Manager of Products and Services here at Alloy Computer Products. So today we're going to have a bit of a run through of Yealink's Device Management Platform. We'll have a look at their on-prem and their cloud-based solution. All right, so what we'll do is, we'll have a look at their YDM or their Yealink Device Management System, which is their on-prem service, and we'll also have a look at the Yealink Management Cloud Service, which is the hosted variation of the platform, which is hosted by Yealink. We'll have a look at a run-through or a product overview of the device management system. We'll have a look at what devices are supported by the system, and we'll also run through some of the product licensing and pricing structures for the device management platform. All right, so what Yealink call their YDM or their Yealink Device Management System is the on-premise variation of the device management platform. This can be installed on your own server or your own virtual machine that you have running in your organization, or if you want to, you can also install it into a cloud-based service such as AWS or something like that. The platform runs on a Linux operating system, and it requires a license to be installed to be able to utilize the system. Now, unlike the cloud service, which I'll go into in a bit more detail in a second, when you are using the on-prem service, because it does have your own unique URL that you're using for the device management platform, the actual phones or devices, I should say, won't connect to your device management platform by default. So you do need to point or direct your phones to your YDM, and this can be done via DHCP option 66 or something similar, or what you could do is actually use Yealink's RPS service to redirect the phones back to your on-premise device management system if you wanted to as well. Okay, looking at the YMCS or the Yealink Management Cloud Service, which is basically just Yealink's device management platform, but it's hosted by Yealink in the cloud. So this system actually has two components to it. It has a device management platform, and it also has the RPS service. So for all of you who have been using the RPS service for quite some time, you would have noticed that mid last year, Yealink upgraded the platform and moved it from their old RPS platform into the new device management platform. Okay, so the on-premise system, the cloud-based system comes in two different variations. It comes with in the basic and the advanced versions. Now I'll go into the differences between the two in a couple of slides' time. Now, just a couple of things to note here. So the YMCS is actually hosted out of the US. There's no hosted version of this in Australia or in Asia at this point. It's all hosted out of the US. Sorry guys, I'm going to quickly just put myself on down D, which I forgot to do. All right, so now when you're using the YMCS, if you are using Yealink's RPS service, you can't actually add devices to both systems. So if you are using Yealink's RPS service and you do want to use Yealink's hosted YMCS service, you'll actually have to remove the Macs from the RPS service and then add them into the YMCS service. Now, unfortunately, also there's no easy migration path to move devices from Yealink's RPS service to the YMCS. So the only way to do this would be to actually export the Macs that you have currently uploaded into the RPS service and then export them and upload them into Yealink's YMCS system. Okay, so now looking at the two different variations of the YMCS service. So we have the basic version, which gives you the full device management platform. It allows you to perform provisioning tasks. It has timing tasks, which can be used to schedule firmware upgrades, phone reboots, configuration updates, and things like that. It also includes phone monitoring as well as QoE reporting. So the QoE reporting can be used to look at jitter, packet loss, and things like that that can be reported on against the phones after phone calls. And with the advanced version, you obviously get everything that was in the basic version, plus you get more detailed call statistics. So you'll be able to see who calls or where calls originated from, where they were directed to. We have advanced device diagnostics as well, so we can remotely pull logs from phones, we can remotely take packet captures from phones and things like that. And then we also have alarm management capabilities as well. So what we can do is actually set up trigger points for certain alarms. For instance, like if registration fails on a particular handset, we can configure alarms with emails being sent to administrators to alert you that a phone has lost registration. All right, now we'll just take a quick look at what you can do in the device management platform. So like I've gone over, we can obviously manage devices. We can create groups of devices as well. We can remotely control the phones. When we say that, we really talk about here as in remotely rebooting phones, remotely registering the account or deregistering the account, being able to take packet captures and things like that. The timing tasks are being able to schedule certain events to take place, which could be upgrading firmware, factory defaulting phones if you had to, updating configuration files and things like that. Remote diagnosis of phones, so being able to do packet captures, being able to look at call statistics and check whether there's packet loss and things like that. The service analysis, so same thing or a similar thing, being able to look at packet loss and check call quality and things like that. And then we also have obviously the batch deployment, so being able to deploy a number of phones simultaneously, being able to push templates, push configuration files, push firmware to a batch of phones. And also we have the ability to actually create multiple administrators on the system. And I'll go through some of these features in a bit more detail as we move through the slides. All right, so just looking at the device management platform in a whole. So these are the key components of the device management platform and what we can do with it. So starting on the left-hand side, we've got the account management. So what we can do is actually create accounts on the device management platform and actually pair those accounts to devices. So we can create SFB or Teams accounts, we can create SIP accounts, and for all those people out there that are actually using Yealink's VCS or video conferencing solutions, we can also create YMS accounts, cloud accounts, and H323 accounts as well. And then we have the device management component, where it'll list all the devices that you have connecting to your YMCS or on-prem YDM system. We can manage firmware and also manage resources here as well. Now, in terms of the device configuration, so there's a few different ways in which we can create configuration templates for these devices. So we can do it based on an individual model. We can do it based on a group of devices, and that group of devices can contain different models as well. We can do it based on an individual MAC address, and also we do have global device parameter settings that we can utilize as well. Now, the YMCS/YDM can also be segmented into different sites. So if you do have multiple sites that may need different configuration templates, we can do this also, and we can manage devices based on different sites. And then we have the device diagnostic component to it, as well as the task management. So being able to schedule or manually implement specified tasks. So once again, that might be upgrading firmware, scheduling a configuration update that gets pushed to phones after hours. And we also can report on those executed tasks as well. Now, on the dashboard of the YDM, it's quite a graphical dashboard, so it can tell you the live running state and also give you live call stats on the dashboard as well. And then we also have the alarm management, so being able to trigger or configure different alarms, which then trigger events such as emailing an administrator once that alarm has been triggered, as well as the system management component where we can create different users/administrators and give them a different permission levels on what they can do on the device management platform. All right, so starting with the basic feature, which is basically provisioning phones and what most people will use the device management platform for. So what the YDM can do is actually host the configuration files, or it can also do a similar task to what Yealink's current RPS does, and it can redirect your phones to a different HTTP, HTTPS, TFTP, FTP type server where the configuration files for your phones are being hosted. Okay, and once again, when you are deploying phones, you can point the phones to your on-premise YDM via DHCP or via Yealink's RPS service. Now, when we're talking about the phones, now, I'm not sure if you are aware, but when phones first boot up, what they will do is actually connect to Yealink's RPS service/device management service upon boot and look for a configuration file. So that for those of you who have utilized Yealink's RPS service for many years, once the phone first boots, it will connect to Yealink's RPS service. If the MAC address of that phone is configured on that service, it will then redirect to your pre-configured configuration server, which the server is being used to host configuration files. Now, same thing for the YMCS. So the phone will connect to that by default. Now, like I mentioned earlier on, you can't have the same MAC address on RPS and on the YMCS. Otherwise, there will be a conflict. So it can only be on one or the other. And by default, it will utilize the RPS before the YMCS. So if you are currently using it on a device on the RPS, that will need to be completely removed from the RPS before you configure it on the YMCS. Okay, looking at the account management. So as stated earlier, you can actually configure users on the YDM. So we can configure user accounts for Skype for Business, Teams, SIP users, YMCS Cloud and H323 users for Yealink's VCS devices. We can then assign those user accounts to a single device or multiple devices. So once you actually pair a user account to a device, those user credentials get pushed to the device along with the, if we're talking about SIP, the SIP registration details, and that device will then go out and try and register on that SIP server. Okay, looking at the device remote control, so being able to register accounts on your devices and also deregister or unregister those devices from that SIP server as well. The ability to actually update configuration files as well as upgrade firmware. We can push resource files out to devices as well. So when we talk about resource files, we're talking about like daylight savings templates, we're talking logos for phone, background images, screensavers, things like that. We also have the ability to factory reset devices from the platform as well as reboot devices as well. Now, if you're using Skype for Business or Teams or 3CX even, we can also change the user status from the YMCS as well. So if you want to put a user on D&D or you want to change their status to away or out at lunch, you can do that from the platform as well. All right, account registration. So here is basically just a screenshot of creating user accounts in the YDM and then pushing those accounts onto devices that you have connected to the YDM as well. All right, configuration and firmware upgrading. Now, what we can do is manually push configuration files out to your devices, as well as obviously firmware files as well. Or alternatively, what we can do is actually schedule these tasks. So if we want to push a new version of firmware out to a fleet of devices out there on your customer's premise, what we can do is schedule that for out of hours, and when your customers come back in the morning, their phones will be up and running with new versions of firmware. All right, once again, a similar thing, but this time with the resource files. So we can manually push resource files out to devices, or we can do that via a scheduled task. Okay, same again for factory resetting devices or rebooting devices. This can be a manual task that you do on each device, or we can also schedule this to take place at a later date or time. All right, so on the YMCS or YDM platform, what we can also do is we can manage particular firmware and resource files. So what we can do is actually upload firmware into the device management platform. So we're not actually telling the phones to go and pull firmware from a different server. What we're doing is actually uploading the firmware or the resource files into the YDM platform and then pushing the firmware out to those devices from that platform. Then once again, we can do that manually or we can schedule a future date or time to do that. Okay, so now looking at the different templates that we can create for your devices. So when we're talking about phones, we can actually create configuration templates on a per device um, model. So what we can do, if you have a fleet of T46Ss, for example, you can create a specific configuration template only for your T46Ss. Now, a great thing about this, I'm not sure if you guys have done much with Yealink's configuration files in the past, but as you know, or if you don't know, they are a text type document that you need to go through and enter different parameters based on the features that you require. But what we can do through the YDM is actually it gives you a graphical interface that you can use to generate those configuration templates. So it makes it a lot easier to manage. Now, if you don't like the idea of doing it through a graphical interface, you can also type out on the screen the parameters that you want set in your template, or you can actually upload a template as well. If you do have a configuration file that you've used elsewhere, you can upload that into the system as well. All right, so as well as creating a configuration template on a per device model, we can also do it with a group of devices as well. So those groups of devices can be different models, it doesn't really matter. And we can also add and remove devices from groups at any time as well. And again, creating those configuration templates, we can do it via the graphical interface, or we can do it via text editing, or we can upload a configuration template as well. All right, if we do have, or you do have unique requirements for a single phone, rather than doing it via a device or via a group, we can create a specific configuration file purely for an individual phone. So based on the MAC address of the phone, we can create a configuration template for that MAC address, and that configuration file will only be pushed and used to that device with a matching MAC address. All right, looking at the sites. So when using the YDM, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually segment the system into different sites. So if you do have, for instance, a location in Melbourne that has different configuration requirements than your warehouse that you have in Brisbane, then you can create different sites and assign different templates to those sites. Now, those sites can also have different scheduled tasks and things like that as well. All right, scheduling tasks. So giving you the ability to actually push configuration updates, firmware updates to phones, rather than doing this manually or having to be there out of hours to push firmware configuration updates to phones. We can actually schedule these tasks for out of hours. It actually gives you a status of the task once it's run as well, and we'll also tell you if there's an error during that task. Okay, looking at the graphical dashboard on the platform as well. So it actually gives you real-time stats. So it tells you the number of devices that are registered, the types of devices that are registered as well. It also tells you what devices are online. It tells you whether devices have gone offline for some reason as well. Um, and also whether there's registration issues or whether devices are registered or not registered. So it's just an easy way to have a quick overview of the devices that you are managing using this platform. Okay, so as mentioned, we can also pull call stats from your devices. So we can actually click on a particular device and we can pull the stats from a previous call. So if you did have a call from one of your customers who reported call quality issues, they can give you a date and a time of when the call took place. you can easily pull up that call from within the device manager, and you can try and work out where those issues were. Now, some of the call stats that are shown, which I'll just show on the next slide actually, is jitter type information, including packet loss as well. It gives you the where the call originated and the remote location as well. So that's your local and your remote URI of the calls. It gives you the starting time, gives you the duration. So quite a bit of information there on the actual call stat from that call. And as you can see in the top right hand side as well, it gives you an overall rating of the quality of the call. So there's a few different or the way that the system rates calls. So we've got a call quality as good, average, or poor. Okay, so now this is another part of the YDM. This is really handy for administrators, especially if you do have customers out there that are having particular issues with their devices. So the YDM allows you to actually remotely run a packet capture on the device. It allows you to export system logs from the phone. Actually allows you to pull recordings, files from the phone as well. So if they do have call quality issues and they can't really explain where the issue was, obviously we can see that from a packet capture, but we can also quickly and easily listen to a call recording and find out or what they were talking about in terms of when they said call quality issues, whether it was mumbling or static or something that they heard on the call. So this part of the platform is really quite handy, and it gives you also the local IP address of the device on the network as well. All right, alarm management. So there's 3 different types of alarm levels. So we've got general, major, and severe. And we can configure the alerts that get sent out based on the actual level of the alarm. So we might just skip over the general alarms, let them go through. But if there is a severe alarm, then we want to hear or receive a message to see where the issue has taken place. So for instance, a registration failure on a device, if registration goes down, we can configure the system to send an alert out to the administrator. All right, system management. So the ability to create multiple administrators and then assign particular function permissions to those administrators. So if you have a junior admin that you want to be able to create accounts on the system, and that's it. So we can give them access to that part of the platform, or if we have support people that you have there and you want to give them access to the device diagnostic section only, then we can do that by giving them particular permissions on the platform. All right, so the devices that are compatible with Yealink's device management platform is pretty much every Yealink device. So all the T19 and all the T2, T4, and T5 phones are all supported, including the conference phones and their deck phones. Now you can see there on that list there, it's only got the W60B, but that is where all the SIP registrations and things for your decked handsets are configured. So there's no need to have the actual handsets available on the platform, just the base station is enough. We also have all the SFB and Teams models there as well. And for those that are using Yealink's video conferencing systems, we can also connect the VC 200, 500, 800, and 880 to the device management platform as well. Now, one of the major issues that we do see with people using Yealink's YDM is using incompatible firmware. So if you are going to use the on-premise or the cloud-based YDM platform, you need to make sure your devices, your phones, for instance, are using a compatible version of firmware. So majority of the T19, T2, T4, and the low-end T5 series phones, they need to be on 83.0.30 or higher. Now there was a early version of the 84 firmware that wasn't supported. I think that may have been a mistake from Yealink and they've forgotten to add support, but that's now been fixed with Yealink's latest version of the 84 firmware. So we need to be using 83 or later, or the newer version of the 84 firmware to support or to have those phones connect to the YDM. Now looking at the T5 series and the conference phones, 83 or 84 will be fine. And Skype for Business, we need to have version 9 or higher as well. So that is definitely a common problem. So people will call in and they'll be asking why their devices aren't showing up in the device management platform, and that is the reason. Now, when you add a MAC address to the YMCS, for instance, once the phone boots up and does connect to it, it actually does give you a status whether the phone's online or offline. And a lot of times, if you are running incompatible or older versions of firmware, then the device will always show as offline. So it's definitely a common problem. And then also if you are running an on-prem version, so if you do point your phones to the URL of your on-prem YDM service and you're finding that devices aren't showing up in the devices list, then please do check your firmware. Now, what I'll just mention quickly actually is with the on-premise version of the YDM, when you do point your phones, whether it's via RPS or via DHCP option 66 or something equivalent, your phones will actually automatically appear in the device management list. You don't need to actually add the MAC address of the device first. They'll actually all appear automatically once you point the phones to your YDM. Whereas with the cloud edition, you need to actually add the MAC address in manually and then your phone will connect to the YMCS. Okay, just to finish things off, we'll have a quick look at the product licensing and also the pricing of the products. So there's two variations of the cloud-based service. That was the basic and the advanced. So there's three different license types. So there's under 1,000 devices, which is actually free for everybody to use. So if you are happy with the basic features of the YMCS service, you are using under 1,000 devices or up to 1,000 devices, then you can use this service for free. If you have over 1,000 or between 1,000 and 5,000 devices, then you'll be paying $5 per device per year to utilize this service. And if you have more than 5,000, that's $4 per year per device. Now, if you do need the advanced functionality of the YMCS, less than 1,000 devices is $5.50 per device per year. 1,000 to 5,000 devices is $9 per device per year. And then greater than 5,000 is $7.50 per device per year. Now with the on-premise solution, there's no free version for this. Now we do have the ability to potentially get trial versions of this for you, but if you are happy to trial the YMCS, then I can set that up, in a matter of minutes. If you do want to trial the on-premise version, then I do have to submit a request to Yealink to set that up and get a license for you. Now, when you are purchasing the YDM on-premise variation, you do need to purchase initially a minimum of 100 devices. So the initial out or price of this to utilize it would be $400. And then you can purchase licenses in multiples of 10 thereafter that. And that's a one-off cost as well. It's not a yearly cost. It's just a one-off purchase. Okay, guys, that's just about it. All right, if you do have any questions, please do. You can either raise your hand and I can unmute you, or you can write some questions under the chat section, and I'm happy to read them out and answer any questions that I can do. If any of you guys do want to trial the YMCS, please send me an email. So my email address is scott.young@alloy.com.au. Shoot me through an email and I can set up a YMCS account for you. And as long as it's under 1,000 devices, we can set it up and you won't pay a thing. Okay, I'll just give you a couple more minutes to see if anybody does have any questions. Now, today's webinar was obviously a bit of a sales overview of the platform. What I will look at doing is doing a more in-depth technical webinar on the platform in the next 3 to 4 weeks, where we'll actually go over and demonstrating creating templates and adding devices and things like that. So do look out for the email from Alloy for that webinar. Okay, guys, if there's no questions, we'll wrap things up. I appreciate everybody joining this afternoon. Thank you for your time, and I'll speak to you all soon. Thank you.